Evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Time. Here's a question. What happens when you crush entire sectors of your own economy for nearly 2 years and then, to compensate for your crime, you decide to inject trillions of dollars of freshly printed cash into the system? What happens if you do that? Well, honestly, we don't really know what happens when you do that because no one in history has ever been stupid enough to try it. It's going to be years before we really understand the consequences of all this, of our government's reckless coronavirus policy. But in the meantime, we can say with total confidence that the American economy is getting very weird. Not all of it. Some of what we're seeing isn't weird in the slightest. It was, in fact, entirely predictable. If you create trillions of U.S. dollars out of nothing, U.S. dollars are going to be worth less, much less. This is called inflation, and we're suffering through it right now. Inflation, very simply, is the result of too much money in the system. If you have too much of something, its value falls, supply and demand, remember? This is what's causing the rise in real estate prices and of Bitcoin and of other assets that investors run to when they no longer trust the country's currency. Why can't you afford a house right now? Simple, because Washington printed too much money. No one should be surprised by this. It's a cycle as old as money itself. Political leaders devalue the currency for short-term gain. In the end, this leads to long-term collapse. Debasing the coinage, that's what they used to call it. For example, by the middle of the 3rd century, the Roman denarius, the silver coin, was only about 2% actual silver. The rest of it was just junk. Within a few years, not incidentally, the entire Roman Empire blew up and the barbarians took over. But it wasn't just the Romans who did this. Every government devalues its currency at some point. They do it because it's irresistible. You can't not do it. If you do it, you get free money and you don't have to raise taxes. It seems like a great idea, but in the end, every government pays the price for doing this, or more precisely, its citizens do. So the current inflation, horrible as it is hardly unexpected. You'd really have to be a Fed chairman not to have seen it coming. So why is this happening? And again, the signs of it are everywhere. There's no room service in your hotel, in case you haven't noticed, and that's just the least of it. Well, one of the reasons this is happening is because government put out some really destructive policies. Here's Fox's Will Cain to explain.
This is the Kathy of Bebo and Kathy's. So this is the sign you had up front, Kathy, when we came in. I don't know if you guys can see that, but we're short-staffed. Please be patient with the staff that did show up. No one wants to look to work anymore. They would rather draw unemployment. Is that really what you're saying?
Oh, that's true. That's so true. I'm so tired of all of it. Quit giving all this unemployment. They're getting unemployment. They're getting the stimulus. Why work? They make a lot of money. They're quitting just so they can get unemployment.
So you never hear anybody on TV say that, but if you're around people with what we used to call working class jobs, you hear it all the time. You hear it a lot. People are mad about it. At the International House of Pancakes in Wasilla, Alaska, not always possible to get pigs in the blanket. Why? Well, here's the message posted on its front door. Due to the fact that Biden gave out way too much free money and nobody wants to work anymore, we are forced to reduce our hours during the week. So there is some truth in this. At times over the past 2 years, some people were making much more from government unemployment benefits than they had been making in the jobs that they left. One analysis found that thanks to the so-called CARES Act, restaurant workers nearly doubled their weekly pay when they became unemployed. The government was literally making it more lucrative for people not to work and stay at home. That is the definition of insanity. Not only do policies like that wreck our economy and close IHOP, there's an obvious moral cost to them. What's the message the government is sending here? The message is you'd have to be an idiot to work. So you got to wonder what damage that message has done to this country's attitudes about work. Well, here's one measure of that damage potentially. Supplemental unemployment benefits ended this fall. They were so clearly nuts. And yet a lot of people didn't go back to work. In fact, even more Americans quit their jobs. One recent poll found that 73% of Americans are thinking about quitting right now. And again, this isn't all bad. This stuff is very complex and we want to be honest. Some jobs aren't worth having. We wish people would quit. It'd be great to see a mass exodus of, say, chief diversity officers from America's corporations and liberal arts colleges. They could all learn to do tub and tile work and would be far better off as a country if they did. We hope they will. And also, we must be honest, for people who do want to work, it's a shrinking number, but some do, and there's very good news for them. Wages are up dramatically, particularly at the bottom end. Some fast food workers are making $18 an hour plus signing bonuses, and that seems like something to celebrate. But of course, no one in Washington is celebrating. This is a victory for Americans who don't have college degrees and that means a defeat for them. So in Washington, they're already thinking of ways to use mass immigration to shaft unskilled workers out of their recent gains. Quote, immigrants could fix U.S. labor shortage, read a recent headline in Vox. Of course it did. The head of Domino's Pizza agrees. He'd like to pay his employees less, and he wants to use newly imported foreign workers to do it. How's the White House feel about this? Well, of course, Biden's on board with it. He wants more Democratic voters from foreign countries. So what you're looking at is the perfect alignment of malignant motives. So expect the borders to stay open. But either way, here's the core point. The incentives that we've constructed in this country over a long period of time, to be fair, but accelerating recently, have a very specific effect. Those policies reward people who don't want a job, and they punish people who do want a job. What they do is they degrade work. They strip it of its inherent meaning. And that's a problem in a country that is running out of things that have inherent meaning. They're telling you that your religion means nothing. Your patriotism means nothing. Your family means nothing. Now they're telling you your work means nothing? What does mean anything? And how long can a society continue that doesn't have meaning?